Welcome to this comprehensive Unreal Engine gameplay ability system series, where we'll be building a third-person action RPG from the ground up. From shooting projectiles and powerful AoE attacks, to dashing, teleporting, and much more. Watch this intro to see how the series will be structured and what to expect. Using this system, we will build abilities that are not only reusable, but multiplayer ready and fully extensible, just like AAA games. By the end, you won't just understand the gameplay ability system, but you'll have built a reusable template featuring the most essential abilities, ready to plug into any project and expand upon. Patreon supporters also get the project files, exclusive in-depth tutorials, and early access to the videos. Before we get started, make sure that your dev environment is set up for C++ development. And if you're new to C++, don't worry, I've prepared 2 extra videos for you. One showing how to set up the same dev environment that I have, including Rider and GitHub Copilot to assist with coding. And another video covering the basics of C++ in Unreal Engine. In this first part, we will set up our project to use gas, and we'll create a shared base character in C++, and use that to build our player and our enemy characters in blueprints. By the end of this series, you'll truly understand how to build scalable and reusable systems. So let's start learning. So let's start by creating a brand new project, and I'm going to base it off the third-person template, and I'm using Unreal 5.6. Now, you can create a blueprint or a C++ project, doesn't really matter. For this, I will start actually with a blueprint project, even though we will be writing C++, but I don't want to have any C++ code written by default, so that any C++ code we add will be our own. And I'm going to give my project a cool name, so we are going to call our game Nexus. That will be the game, that will be the name of the project moving forward. So just press create. Right, and here we have our third-person template, and the only thing I'm going to do is just change this green color to like something grayish, because yeah, at the green I think it's a bit too much. But now we need to get our project ready for the gameplay ability system, and that means we need to add the plugin. So go up here to Edit, go to Plugins, and search for Gameplay Abilities. And we want the gameplay abilities. So right now, this is the only plugin we need. Maybe later we're going to use the targeting system, but for now, the gameplay abilities is the main plugin we need. And we're going to restart the engine. All right, and now we are ready to create our first C++ class, which will be our base character, where all the characters will inherit from. That means our player and our enemy. So go up to Tools and say New C++ class, choose Character, and let's call it Nexus Character Base, and just create the class. Now, if like me, you were starting with the blueprints and not a C++ project, you will get this message that the engine now includes sources and that you should close the editor and build from your IDE, which is what we will do now. And our IDE, or the IDE I'm using, is Rider. So Unreal Engine automatically opened the game for me in Rider. So I am going to open Rider and close the engine. So whether you're using Visual Studio or Rider, you should be able to follow along. The only thing is I'm going to be also using some autocomplete from GitHub Copilot. So if you see sometimes that things are just written for me, that's GitHub Copilot, which is very handy. And now we see under Nexus here, as soon as the project loads, that we have our character base. Now I'm just going to create a new folder and call it the gameplay ability system. So I'm just going to put all of our code in this folder, and I'm going to move my character. Well, let's actually, under this gameplay ability system, let's create a characters folder, and then I'm going to move my base character here. So I'm moving both the header and the C++ file that were created for me. Now, the reason we create our base character in C++ is because we want to add the ability system component on the base character, so on the pawn itself, because both our player and enemy will inherit from this base character, and then they will both have the gameplay ability system and any default functionality that we add in this base character. And this can only be done in C++. But before adding the gameplay ability system component, we need to first add the modules for the gameplay ability. So go to your build.cs. So this will be your project name.build.cs file. And you will find here something called private dependency module names. And here we need to add the modules of the gameplay ability. So this is sort of like enabling the plugin. So we will add 3 modules here: the gameplay abilities, the gameplay tasks, and the gameplay tags. So we need these 3 things. And now we're ready to go back to our base character and add the ability system component. Now, one thing also, so you see here the base character inherits from the regular actor character. We need to also add an interface. So I'm going to add the ability system interface, I believe it's called. And we also need to include it here. So include the ability system interface. So this ability system interface just has one function. So get ability system. And this, because we're implementing it on the pawn, we are adding this function on the pawn class itself. And this is just one function that returns the ability system component so that you can call it on any actor and see if they do have an ability system or not. So we need to implement this function. So under the public scope here, I'm going to write virtual and yeah, autocomplete for me. So we add the definition of the get ability system component function. So right now we're in the header file. So these are all definitions. We haven't done implementations yet. Then under public here, we are also going to add our ability system components. So a nice thing about GitHub Copilot is I say ability system component, and then it auto-completes for me. I'm just going to change the category to call it ability system. But this is basically what we want. We want a uAbility system class with the name ability system component for our variable name. All right, and now we move on to our CPP file for our base character, and let's add the ability system component. So here in our constructor, let's say add the ability system component. And this is exactly what we want, this and this. Let me explain. I'm going to change a few things. But first, we create the default sub-object for our uAbility system component. This is basically adding the component to our character and naming it ability system component. Then we set it to be replicated because we're going to be doing multiplayer in this series. And the replication mode, this is very important. This is what defines for the ability system what kind of things are replicated. Mixed means there is a lot of things replicated, and the documentation suggests you do mixed for characters, but minimal for enemies. And since this will be used by both our character, our player, and our enemies, we need this to be a variable that can be configured by the player and by the enemy. So I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to go back to my header file here, and I'm going to define it as a protected variable. What was the type again? Yeah, this was the type of the enum that we're looking for. Let's call this replication mode, and let's give it a default value here. We're gonna make it default value of mixed. And also we want it to be a U property. We want it edit anywhere and blueprint read write, because we're gonna edit it from the blueprint itself. All right, and this is complaining because we haven't imported the ability system component. So we just go here and do include ability system component. This will stop complaining now. And back in our CPP file, now we just need to use the variable name that we created. So this replication mode. I'm going to call this the ability system component replication mode. So ASC replication mode, we're going to plop it in here. All right, so now we have set up the ability system component itself and made the replication mode a blueprint read-write variable that can be modified by its children. Now we're almost done with the setup of the ability system component. There is just one more thing we need, and we're not going to do it here, but I'm going to show you what it is. we need to call init ability actor info. So this initializes for the ability system component who is the owner actor and who is the avatar actor. In our case, the owner and the avatar are both the pawn. But in some cases, if you have the ability system component on the player state, then the owner could be the player state, or the owner could be the controller, and the avatar is the pawn. But we need to tell the ability system component which is the owner and which is the avatar, because this information becomes very useful in all of the abilities that we're going to build. But we don't do it here on construction. Documentation, again, recommends doing it in two places. So back here in my header, I am going to go to the protected scope here for my functions, and I am going to define I'm going to override a function called possessed by. Thank you, editor, for suggesting it. This is mainly for the enemies when they're possessed by a controller. And for the player, there is a function called onRep, player state. So this is when the player state is replicated, so a player joins a server or a player spawns. So on both of these functions, we're going to initialize our ability system component. So we just need to define our function here, possessed by, and that's exactly what I want. So call the super, which is the parent implementation. So whatever is in the parent function, do that. And then if the ability system component is valid, call init ability actor info. And we are going to do this as well for onRep player state. So these are identical here. Now, the last function we need to implement is the interface function for getting the ability system component. There's an error here. Oh, I am missing the public keyword here. And this class is actually no longer needed because we include the entire ability system header file. Yeah, so now we just need to implement this get ability system component function, which is just a function that returns the ability system component that we defined here. So this is very simple. It's exactly as GitHub Copilot says, returns a ability system component, and it's this one. Excellent. Now, one more thing that you will also usually see in the constructor function of any C++ base character is adding default values for the character movement component. So I basically copied all of these things from the third-person character C++ file. So this is just setting the capsule size, use controller rotation, and adding some default values to the character movement component. Now, of course, you can do all of this in the editor and blueprints as well, but this just gives us default values for both our player and our character and our enemy as starting points. Now, I just need to include the header files for the capsule and for the character movement. Great. That should be it for the C++ setup. Let's run and hopefully we have no errors. Follow the build process. Looking good. Excellent. That was great. No errors on the first try. And now our editor opens. Everything should run smoothly. We are still using the third-person character now, so we want to replace this with our player character. So let's go ahead and create our player character. So I'm going to create a new folder here and call this the gameplay ability system, just like we did in our C++ project. Create a new characters folder, and inside it I'm going to create a blueprint class and expand all classes and search for our Nexus character. This is the C++ character that we created. Now we just want to create a child of it, which we will call our BP player. Let's call it actually our Nexus player. All right. So first we need a mesh. So I'm going to use Quinn simple for our player. -90 on the Z, -90 rotation. And we are going to be using ABP unarmed. This is the animation blueprint that comes with the third-person template in 5.6. I'm going to compile so I can edit the materials. I'm going to use the same material. I just made it yellow so that our player is yellow. And remember, this is a base character for both our player and our enemy, so we didn't add a camera or a spring arm, so we need to add these things. So add a spring arm. We're going to call this the camera boom, and attach the camera boom. We need a camera component, and we're going to call this the follow camera. So we're just going to set the default values just like we do, just like the third-person character does. So the arm length will be 400. The location will be 8 here, so we just move it up a little bit. And important to say, use pawn control rotation. And for the follow camera, we're just going to socket it to the spring endpoint here. All right. Now, we don't have any input, so this character won't move. But let's first spawn the character instead of the old third-person character that spawns here. So this is still the white one. So we need to go to our third-person blueprints, and in our game mode here, this is where we define the character that we're going to spawn. So instead of BP third-person character, we're going to make it BP Nexus player. So now if I play, I have the Nexus player, but I can't move or aim. So I am just going to get my third-person character here, and I'm going to copy the move and aim functions that we have here. So copy move and paste it in our player, copy aim and paste it here. These are very simple functions that just add input on the X and Y, and the move function is also very simple. It just adds movement input as well. Now I'm going to also copy all of this. So these are the input actions that are going to actually call the functions. And I'm going to paste them in my player's event graph here. Now we're going to get a few extra ones that we don't need. These are for touch input. We're not going to be doing touch, so I'm going to delete these. And the reason it says custom event is because I copied them from here. This is an interface function, and this one doesn't implement the interface, so they get default names. All right, so now we should be able to move and look around. Great. Let me just put all of these in a comment, move and aim. Now, one thing also, there is a third-person player controller here. This is what adds the actual input mapping context. So there's a whole bunch of things for Android and iOS. Actually, we don't also need any of that. Whoops. We need just this check. None of that. Okay, so we need these two input mapping contexts. The first one is the input mapping context default. So this contains what happens when you jump, move, and look. But look is only using only gamepad. You see both of them use gamepad and controller, but look only uses gamepad. That's because mouse look is in a separate mapping here. So you can move mouse look into a default mapping as well, but I'm just going to plug in both. So now if you play, everything still works. I can move and I can look. Amazing. And as you can see, let me close all of that. In our Nexus player now, we have our ability system component here. So this is what we're going to be using throughout most of the series to create things and call things and add abilities and add effects and so on. Now, the final thing for this part is let's create our enemy character to make sure that everything is configured correctly. So we're going to create a new blueprint and also base it off of our Nexus character base and call this the BP Nexus enemy base. So for the enemy, I'm going to use the Manny mesh, -90, -90. Also use the unarmed animation blueprint, compile, and I'm going to change this also to, I made a red version of Manny's material. So now Manny is red. And one thing very important to mention, I said that we created in our CPP file here the ability system replication mode. So this defaults to mixed, and I said we should change it for the enemy. So I'm going to go over here in our class defaults, or just click on the base, and I'm going to search for our ASC replication mode. So we see it here, it's set to mixed. I'm going to change it to minimal. So this only replicates minimal gameplay information about the ability system component, while mixed replicates a lot. For enemies, it's recommended to be minimal, and we're going to go more in depth about this in the future. But for now, we have our enemy here, and we can put them in the world. They're not going to do much, but hey, they're there, we're there, and we have our base set up. Alright, so we've laid the foundation for the ability system component, we've enabled the plugin, added the modules, created a single base character with the ability system component attached to it, set some default variables, and we now have a player and an enemy in blueprints that inherit from our base C++ class. And now in the next part, we're going to be creating our first ability, which is going to be a dash ability. So if by the time you're watching this, part 2 is already out, it should all be in a single playlist, so you can go ahead and easily watch it next. And if not, subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified when I do release it. I'll try to keep the release times between these videos short, so make sure to stay tuned. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.